I'm going to turn my video off. So the public input shows that it's still connecting. Once it shows that it's connected, I'll go ahead and jump back on and let you know.
Okay.
Oh, it's connected.
All right. Good evening. Welcome. I'm Kimberly Golden Brandt, Director of the Livable Frederick Planning and Design Office. I want to thank you for joining us for this virtual open house. We're excited to have this opportunity to introduce the draft Sugarloaf Treasured Landscape Management Plan, and most importantly, to hear your comments on the draft plan. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the other members of our team who are here tonight. Tim Goodfellow is our Livable Frederick Environmental Planner. Tim developed the draft Sugarloaf plan. We also have Dennis Suprzinski. Dennis is our Livable Frederick Planning Manager, and John Demetrio, who is our Livable Frederick Design Planner. We are live streaming tonight's open house and also recording it. We're compiling all of the comments that we receive at the open houses in a document that will be provided to the Planning Commission for their consideration as they begin their workshops on the plan next month. So again, the plan that we're introducing tonight is a draft, and it's intended to give the Planning Commission a starting point for their work. And when the Planning Commission has a Sugarloaf plan that they're satisfied with, that they're comfortable with, it will advance to the County Council for their consideration. Both the Planning Commission and the County Council will conduct public hearings. So with our open houses this week, we are beginning what will be an extensive public review process. Tim has prepared a presentation that provides background on why a plan for the Sugarloaf area is a priority for the county, and also explains the plan's connection to the Livable Frederick Master Plan. Tim's also going to review the plan's vision and goals and describe some of the proposed policies and initiatives. And then we'll open up the meeting for comments. So for people who are watching, we're going to do a screen share and review the call-in information. And we're going to display this information again at the end of Tim's presentation. So if you'll give me a moment, I'm going to pull that up. All right. So this is our, when it comes time for comments, you'll dial the number that you see on the screen. That's 1-855-925-2801. And you'll be prompted to enter a meeting code, and that is 9006. To be placed in the queue to comment live during the meeting, you'll press *3. If you don't want to wait in the queue and you'd like to record a comment that will be played during the meeting, you'll press *2, and you could do that now. You don't have to wait until it's time for comments. Comments tonight are going to be limited to 3 minutes per caller, so we get to hear from as many people as possible. For people who may be listening to the meeting via telephone and would like to watch the live stream, you should go to www.publicinput.com/A and then 8632. Again, that's www.publicinput.com/A 8632. And finally, while we have this light up, I wanted to note that your written comments are welcome. We encourage you to submit those to our email address, and that's sugarloafarea.frederickcountymd.gov. All of the email comments that we receive are reviewed by staff and will be shared with the Planning Commission. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And with that, I'm going to again thank you all for joining us for the open house, and turn it over to Tim for his presentation.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Tim Goodfellow from the Livable Frederick Planning and Design team. As Kim mentioned, I do have a PowerPoint, so 1 minute while I get the screen up. Okay, so I'm going to give an overview of the draft Sugarloaf Treasured Landscape Management Plan and present some highlights of the draft plan as well. So I'm going to start with some several photographs of this very beautiful and bucolic Sugarloaf area landscape. You know, as we all know, it's a very special place with extensive forest cover, unique habitats, and the only mountain in the Maryland Piedmont. Sugarloaf Mountain creates a vivid and indelible image in many people's minds. Even some of the roads in the area are very picturesque and scenic. The one on the right is Slate Quarry Road, and the image on the upper left is Page Road. Frederick County adopted its current policy document for land use planning called the Livable Frederick Master Plan in late 2019. And I'll use the acronym LFMP for short. The three main sections of the LFMP are listed here: the vision, the development framework, and the action framework. There's also a thematic plan map, just shown right here. That's a generalized depiction of the county's primary and secondary growth areas, the agricultural sector, and the green infrastructure, of which Sugarloaf is a part. Now, within the green infrastructure sector of the LFMP, the Sugarloaf area is described as a rural heritage landscape due to its unique qualities and the mountain's iconic status on the landscape in our community. These areas are deserving of additional study and planning. That's why the implementation plan for the LFMP calls for large area plans be created for the treasured landscapes in the county, and those are identified as Sugarloaf Mountain, of course, the Catoctin Mountain Range, the Middletown Valley, and Catoctin Creek. So the implementation plan is simply a work plan which lists possible future initiatives, studies, other plans currently underway. We, of course, have the Sugarloaf plan as well as the South Frederick Corridors plan. Formal kickoff of the Sugarloaf plan occurred in February of 2020 with release of the Sugarloaf briefing book and a community meeting at Urbana High School on February 27th of 2020. The briefing book is an introduction, a document for initial project scoping for the plan, contains some history and background data, and an introduction to various issues, challenges, and opportunities to be addressed in the plan. So I want to have a few words on the process for reviewing and adopting land use plans. So we released the draft plan several weeks ago. We did work with an advisory group and gathered feedback and comments from them. And we're here tonight at the second of our community open houses. Then the Planning Commission will begin their review next month, the first of many public workshops they will hold. And their charge is to create a Planning Commission recommended Sugarloaf plan and transmit it to the County Council. That's required by state law. Any planning commission or planning board recommends a plan to the approving authority in the county. In our county, that's the County Council. So the Planning Commission can essentially change anything in the draft plan and craft it to their recommended plan in the creation of their recommended plan after receiving public input, comment, after holding a public hearing. So there's lots of opportunity for public participation and engagement. So then the Planning Commission will, as I mentioned, transmit its recommended plan to the County Council to begin another cycle of reviews, public workshops, public hearings, and final adoption of a Sugarloaf plan, which will occur sometime in 2022. It's hard to predict when that'll occur, but however long it takes the Planning Commission and the Council to review and get through the plan. So the County Council is the final decision makers on all elements of the plan, all the policies, goals, recommendations. So a bit on the organization of the Sugarloaf plan that's shown here with a listing of the chapters. There are multiple sections and subsections with each one of those chapters. We have an appendix, kind of acts as a repository of data. There's several what we call sidebar items, just short informational pieces on topics related to the environment and conservation. There's a vision statement and goals for the plan. Vision statement describes a desired and achievable future state or condition. And I'll review both of those in a moment. Then the plan contains policies and initiatives. The policies act as affirmative statements of support or intent to guide future decision making. And the initiatives are simply recommendations for action for county and private sector implementation and performance. And I'll review some of those as well. Next, we have the Sugarloaf Rural Heritage Overlay Zoning District. I'll refer to that as the overlay district or the overlay zone for short. I'll review the purpose and intent statement and some of the goals of the overlay. So the plans, the overall plan goals are broad as listed here on the screen. They're designed to basically shape and drive the plan. It's essentially what the plan strives to achieve. Next, I'm going to review just a few initiatives that are contained in the draft Sugarloaf plan. And we consider these initiatives or recommendations for action as community enhancements, addressing quality of life issues in the area for the residents down there. So the first one established the Sugarloaf Area Forest Initiative, which essentially utilizes Forest Conservation Act funds from development projects on private lands in the Sugarloaf area. Now the Forest Conservation Act mitigation funds are what is created from when a development project moves forward. They're required by state law. All counties in Maryland have this law except Allegheny and Garrett County. So any development project is required to preserve trees on site or plant trees on site. If that can't be achieved because of constraints, there's a fund that the development community pays into to have new forests planted to mitigate for the forest loss from development projects. So we're proposing to use this establish a program to use these funds on private land in the Sugarloaf area. So essentially it would compensate the property owner for planting trees. The county, this program would plant the trees in exchange for payment and a permanent conservation easement on the new forest lands. The next initiative that we're proposing is to establish a network of water storage tanks for fire suppression. This is simply a proactive step to address future threats in the area. The wildfires are not limited to the West Coast and the western part of the U.S. that we're seeing now. So this is an idea that was actually created by our fire and rescue services to address future challenges and threats in the Sugarloaf area. And the last one I'll touch on, or second to last one I'll touch on, is collaborating with the Sheriff's Office and our Division of Public Works to apply speed calming to areas of Thurston Road and Park Mills Road to lower speeds and to improve safety along those two roadways. And the final initiative I'd like to describe is shown here on this map. It proposes an expansion of the Carrollton Manor Rural Legacy Area. The Rural Legacy, it's a program, it's a land preservation program created by the state of Maryland in 1997. All counties have rural legacy areas. And what you see outlined in blue is the Carrollton Manor Rural Legacy Area. That was created in the county in 2003. And this initiative proposes the expansion of the rural legacy area into Sugarloaf, the entirety of the Sugarloaf planning area, simply to increase options and opportunities for landowners to enroll voluntarily and enter into these state preservation programs. Okay, so the next thing I want to touch on is the overlay district. This is the purpose and intent statement. It's a bit long. This is located in the very beginning of the plan. And this is essentially the rationale for creating the overlay district. It answers the questions why it's being created and why it's needed. And there is direction and guidance for the overlay zone from the LFMP, which has recommendations for the creation of this overlay district. And other foundational elements for the overlay zone are found in the implementation plan and the briefing book that I mentioned earlier. And the goals of the overlay zone, this is what the overlay will achieve and how it will function. Okay, continuing with the overlay zone, there is a regulatory component. This does achieve and address what we've heard from many people in the area, residents in the community and landowners, and from our advisory group. So the overlay zone is designed to address incompatible land uses in a highly sensitive area. It's designed to address the scale and intensity of development in this area. It does contain design standards for such things as building facades, lighting, and other building elements. And there's a recommended list of prohibited uses for the area. Happens to be 3 of the uses that, in conjunction with the advisory group, were determined that they would not be appropriate in this highly sensitive area in the Sugarloaf area. Now, these uses and all the uses listed in the overlay zone are currently permitted in the agricultural zone and the resource conservation zone. Those are the 2 zoning districts that comprise the vast majority of the Sugarloaf planning area. Okay, kind of wrapping up here with a few more details on the plan. This is the boundary of the planning area that's currently in the draft plan. And I'll just review some of the borders here. So the southern boundary, of course, is the Montgomery County line. You see that's abutting the Montgomery County Agricultural Reserve. The western boundary follows the Monocacy River and small portions of Route 28 and Greenfield Road. Then the rest of the Monocacy River all the way up to Route 80, Fingerboard Road. And the northern boundary of the planning area, the study area, is Route 80 and the entirety of the historic Hope Hill community. Then on the eastern edge, it follows Route 80 and parts of Thurston Road, and then the main stem of Bennett Creek, eastward to Interstate 270, and then back down to the Montgomery County line. Okay, so another recommendation that's in the plan is to create a new comprehensive plan designation or master plan designation for the lands owned by Stronghold Incorporated, also known as Sugarloaf Mountain. This is proposing a new designation, Treasure Landscape Sugarloaf, to distinguish it from its current land use plan designation, which is public parkland and open space. And as we all know, that or if you don't know, the lands owned, Sugarloaf Mountain is not owned by the federal government or the state of Maryland or Frederick County. It's privately owned. So this land use designation is proposed to distinguish stronghold lands from publicly owned land. As an example here, where the cursor is to the west of the Sugarloaf lands is the state-owned Monocacy Natural Resource Management Area here around the Monocacy River. And that's in darker green, indicating that public parkland open space land use plan designation. The Sugarloaf draft plan also is recommending several zoning changes in the area. And I have 3 slides here to show. This is the area in hatched, the green and white hatching is the areas that we are recommending for additional resource conservation zoning. As you can see, these are, well, you can't really see, but I'll explain it to you. The areas proposed for RC zoning correspond to the stream valleys, the wooded stream valleys in a forested condition, the FEMA 100-year floodplain, and other steep topographical gradients that have forest cover. So here in this part of the Sugarloaf area, the green is the current resource conservation zoning. We're recommending additional resource conservation zoning be applied to these other sensitive environmental elements on the landscape. Another slide of the area. In the center here is the north branch of a tributary to Bennett Creek. Again, we're proposing resource conservation zoning along some of the steep slopes that exist along the stream valley and the forest cover that exists in connection with the stream. Down here in the bottom is Urbana Branch, another tributary to Bennett Creek, which is proposed for additional RC conservation or resource conservation zoning. And we are also proposing some additional R1 residential zoning to existing developed subdivision, one being the Amelung Estates here, an older subdivision along Park Mills Road, and some of the Remsburg Estates. Those are the little bit newer subdivision lots here along Roderick Road. And the final slide about zoning is some additional sensitive stream valleys that either have steep slopes or are in a forested condition or contain FEMA 100-year floodplain. So next steps, we are going to be compiling all the comments we received from at this week's public meetings, from the advisory group, and any emails that come in. We're going to package all those and distribute those to the Planning Commission and the County Council. As I mentioned, the Planning Commission, their review begins September. September 15th is the first all-day workshop proposed for the Planning Commission to start reviewing the public comments and diving into the draft plan. That begins their first workshop, one of many, as I mentioned. They will hold a public hearing to hear from citizens, residents, and anybody from the public who wants to talk about the plan and comment. And they will formulate their recommended Sugarloaf plan and submit that to the County Council, which will begin, as we mentioned, another round of reviews, public workshops, public hearing, and a final adoption. So again, there are many opportunities for public engagement and commentary on this process as the elected and appointed officials deliberate and decide on a Sugarloaf plan. So that concludes my presentation. This is just another reminder of the process for dialing in and submitting, making live comments or leaving a recorded message. And as Kim mentioned, that's the all the instructions and the codes for doing so.
All right, so the number to call again is 1-855-925-2801, and you'll want to enter meeting code 9006. If you press *3, you'll be placed in the queue to comment live. If you don't want to wait in the queue, you can press *2 and record a comment that will be played during tonight's meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, you're also welcome to submit comments via email. That is sugarloafareaplan@frederickcountymd.gov. As we've mentioned, all of the comments we've received via email will be shared with the Planning Commission and the County Council.
Okay, I'll stop the sharing the screen here.
and I have lived for 50 years. Oh, hello? I'm number 3. Hello? Am I live?
You are live.
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Many of us were elated when the County Council approved the Livable Frederick Blueprint for moving forward with Frederick County's planning for the next half century. It values those special characteristics of our county that make it home. So we were extremely disappointed to see that the first proposed area management plan developed under these guidelines conspicuously omits over 350 acres of sensitive land within that geographical boundary from its scope, much of which is owned by a single developer, removing critical conservation resource protections. The Sugarloaf Treasured Land Management Plan identifies so many special features of our southern border. Pristine farmlands with active use patterns that involve people coming to these farms to ride horses, learn skills, recreate, and buy farm products. These rural areas add irreplaceable value to our county, yet this part of our county has very strong pressure to conform to the mega development in northern Montgomery County at a cost to us all for the gain of a very few. This is one of the very important reasons why this planning model for our southern section is a key element in our efforts to keep what we have, which is what we value, our rural, natural, historic beauty. Let's consider the unintended consequences of removing a few hundred acres from the planned protective area. First, given that this zone plan is the first to be considered since Livable Frederick was first established, the zoning plan needs to adhere completely and in good faith to its concepts. If there begin to be cracks starting now, imagine the pressures to carve out special exemptions for wealthy developers across the county as this process moves forward. Secondly, there are some wonderful rural natural features that will suffer negatively from this specific removal of many hundreds of acres from the original plan. 2 pristine trout streams, Bear Branch and Furnace Branch, are contained within this area. Bar T Mountainside Camp is a model of initiative environmental stewardship, and it's located in this area as well. It seems like a slap in the face to Joe Richardson, owner of Bar T, that his heroic environmental stewardship will sit so close to the massive developments that may come to fruition if these lands are carved out from an otherwise strong conservation plan for the area. What lessons do we teach by asking many of us to do our part towards conservation while exempting some well-connected individuals or special interests to the detriment of the whole county? In closing, our environmental footprint needs to be put on a diet. More trees, less CO2, and clarity about identifying what facilitates this mission. It is not an easy task, but it is within the reach if we work together in a very serious and consistent way. And this removal of land for things that will take us in the wrong direction simply must not be allowed to happen if we are to stand by our Livable Frederick guidance and protect our county's future well-being. Thank you. Happy trails. Susan Hanson.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Johanna Springston. My husband and I live at 8101 Fingerboard Road, also known as Route 80. We have a small farm there, which has been in my family for 100 years. Our property is located directly across Route 80 at Parks Mill Road from a large tract of land owned by the developer, Mr. Natelli. Much like the testimony I heard on Tuesday night from the residents on and around Thurston Road, the land Mr. Natelli owns along Route 80 has also been exempted from inclusion in the Sugarloaf plan His land spans from Route 80 to 270 on both sides of Park Mills Road. As you head west on Route 80, adjacent to Mr. Natale's land, are several other large tracts of land on the west side of 270 that are also not included in the Sugarloaf plan. I can only assume that Mr. Natale and the other large landowners will eventually seek to develop this area. The plan's proposed map as currently drawn shows the boundary with Route 80 instead of 270. Drawing the boundary at Route 80 will place a number of homes right next to any potential development. Although these homes along Route 80 would be part of the Sugarloaf plan, which touts preservation, they would in fact be overshadowed by any potential development in that area between Route 80 and 270. They would have all the problems of development, loss of rural setting, increased traffic, much higher density, and none of the monetary advantages Mr. Natale will enjoy when he develops his land. Bringing additional development to this land along Route 80 would no doubt require at some point the widening of Route 80, dislocating any number of residents due to their proximity to the road. If you have ever driven this stretch of road between Parks Mill and Baker Valley, you will know that many of the houses, especially in the Hope Hill community, are located quite close to the road. Developing on the west side of 270 will definitely change the character of our neighborhood in such a way that those of us living on Route 80 will no longer be living in a rural setting. The community of Hope Hill, one of the oldest African American communities in Frederick County, will be adversely impacted. I understand that the Sugarloaf plan's boundary was altered to include the entirety of the Hope Hill community, but development adjacent to this community, as well as a wider Route 80, will in effect destroy the character of this community. So as bothered as I am about opening the door to development on the west side of 270, I am really bothered by what appears to be a backdoor process to draw the boundaries of this plan. I have learned that when the county convened the Citizens Advisory Committee, the boundary line that follows Route 80 had already been drawn, and the planning staff was not open to moving the boundary from Route 80 to 270. Why is this? And why weren't property owners along Route 80 ever consulted? I will venture to guess that Mr. Natale was consulted. These kinds of behind-the-scenes land use deals with developers lack transparency and erode community trust. I believe that 270 should be the natural border for the Sugarloaf plan on its Urbana side. Why? If we are to achieve true preservation of the Sugarloaf area, we need to buffer from the intense development that is and will continue to take place on the east side of 270. The land between Route 80 and 270 provides that buffer. Also, there are no homes along 270 that would be adversely affected if the line is drawn there. But there are numerous homes on Route 80 that will be forever changed or destroyed if development is allowed to encroach past 270. The land between Route 80 and 270 should and could be a much needed buffer for all of us who are living along Route 80 and would like to continue to live here. In fact, I think that whenever you're creating a preservation plan, that the county should buffer the plan's area in ways that protect rural areas from development. What good will it be for all of us residents who live along Route 80 to be forced into a preservation plan that is directly adjacent to development? We will lose the rural character of our community, but be unable to sell our land for development. However, be forewarned, once you change the character of our neighborhood, landowners will be able to make a good case for changing the zoning of their property to conform with the new character of our neighborhood. In closing, if you are going to create livable plans for Frederick County, it makes sense to ensure that they do the least harm to the people who are actually living right here now. Mr. Natale does not live in our community. His interests are entirely different from our own, and in this case, his interests are at odds with the people who live here, both on Thurston Road and along Route 80. I say the county should hold the line for development at 270. I have some questions that I think the county should answer with regard to the development of this plan. Why does the plan's boundary follow 270 in some parts, but then follow Route 80 in other parts where Mr. Natelli owns land? What was the process for drawing the boundary of the plan along Route 80? Who was involved in that process, and why weren't property owners along Route 80 consulted? Is it too late to alter the boundaries of this plan? On Tuesday night, Mr. Goodfellow mentioned that the planning staff met with a handful of landowners regarding this plan. Who were those landowners and what was discussed? Is there a record of these discussions? And finally, given that the county is open to developing the land around the Route 80-270 intersection near Thurston Road and the land between Route 80 and 270, what is the long-term plan for roads, including Thurston Road, Parks Mill Road, and Route 80 between Parks Mill and Baker Valley Road? How will changes to these roads affect the already existing community and individual property owners? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. May I suggest that you do submit those in writing? You had quite a few very good questions, and we'd like to receive those in written form.
Yes, I will submit it in writing.
Hosting this second town hall. Just want to make sure that you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So I just want to make clear that we're all talking about the same parcel of land that was excluded from the planning area. As far as I know, Mr. Natelli does not have any land right off of Route 80 proper, but we're talking about the properties that he owns that are kind of wedged in between 270 and Thurston Road. Is that, am I correct in that understanding?
Yes, those that area you described, that is the location of the lands owned by Mr. Natelli, yes.
And that makes up the bulk of the land that was that has been apparently excluded from the planning area and also exempted from the rural heritage overlay, correct?
Yeah, those lands you described are not within the current boundary or study area of the Sugarloaf draft plan.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's just what I wanted to make clear, because other people are saying some things about where he may or may not have land, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what I'm trying to talk about. So I do have some concerns here about the apparent lack of transparency that has occurred since the Stakeholders Advisory Group had their last meeting, I believe, what was it, October of 2020. As I understand it, there was a draft of the plan promised right around end of March, right around end of February or early March. And then there was about a 4 or 5 month delay. And then all of a sudden this draft that we're talking about now appeared. Now, the question that really needs to be answered, and I didn't quite articulate it right on Tuesday, was did the advisory group participate in the removal, in the decision to remove these lands from the planning area, or did they even know about it? It seems to me that they might have been caught by surprise. And so if that's the case, then it seems like this decision of how to set the planning area was taken out of their hands. And it gave Mr. Natelli an advantage right out of the gate. If he wanted to make his case to have his lands excluded from the planning area, the proper point and place for him to do that would have been before the Planning Commission and the County Council, not behind closed doors. So one thing I would also like to know, are there, and the previous caller mentioned this, are there any minutes of these meetings? That may help shed some light as to exactly what was discussed among the advisory group members. Principally, I'm opposed to opening this land to development, and I do believe that excluding Mr. Natelli's properties from the planning area is an open door to development. It's peeling back a layer of the onion, if you will. And I understand that there are many other steps he would have to go to if and when he gets an opportunity to develop it. But this is definitely opening the door. If we are sincere in achieving the livable Frederick goals of preserving our rural heritage, preserving forest cover, protecting streams, and mitigating climate change, then excluding his properties from this planning area doesn't make any sense. It's counter to achieving those goals. Logistically, Thurston Road is the only access to these properties that I can see on the map. And in order to open up access, whether it's commercial or residential, you would have to tear that road apart, unless they're planning on putting a new 270 interchange south of the 80 interchange. All of this just spells a massive disruption of the land, the potential for cutting down trees and forest cover. There are parts of streams and I think Bennett Creek in there. So, we're really going to disturb the entire landscape if it's going to be developed, and that's obvious. And that, again, that's not what we need to be doing, in my opinion, in the era of climate change. It's hard to second guess, somebody investing in land. I don't know exactly when Mr. Natelli bought this property. Maybe it was 20 or 30 years ago, I think. But, all investments, especially real estate, are speculative. And a lot of things have changed in the time since he bought that. We had the last BOCC that created a huge pipeline of development. Climate change is now a very pressing issue, and we're seeing the effects of it, not only across the nation, but across the world. So it doesn't make any sense now that we're still chasing this, this must-have growth. I think it's too much, and we need to really take a break and sit down and talk more about this. And I heard mention of the economic benefit last time, and it looks like in the plan, the best prospect for that is to make this kind of an extension of the Montgomery County Biotech Corridor. Well, that seems all very subjective now, and I imagine it is at this point. I can't imagine that it's any more than just a dream right now. But we saw this movie before with the updated Urbana MXD and with Jefferson Tech Park. Both of those areas were supposed to have a commercial component and bring jobs to the area, and we've seen that didn't materialize at all in Jefferson Park, and it was vastly scaled down when we redid the Urbana MXD, when we updated that a few years ago. So for these reasons, I'm really concerned about the transparency, and then I think something needs to, I don't know. I'd like to see perhaps this go back to the advisory group for them to have a say in public about what exactly they want to include or exclude from the planning area, and then for all the logistical and principal reasons I stated, I really don't think that we need to be opening up this land for development. Thank you very much.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Terrific, thank you. I'm a resident of Thurston Road. I am not going to pretend to be as polished as the three individuals who've spoken before me. I think the gentleman prior echoed many of our shared sentiments, but I'm just going to give you a bit of my perspective. I grew up in Gaithersburg in Montgomery County. We bought our first home here on Thurston Road in 2014. And since 2014, it's going to be 7 years that we've been here in November. We have experienced 3 instances like this one, 3 instances in which an individual or company purchased a parcel of land and attempted to change the zoning restrictions in place to benefit themselves. It started with a shooting range, and then when the shooting range didn't work, it attempted to become a wedding venue on Thurston Road. I don't know if any of you live nearby or have gone up and down Thurston Road. It is already exponentially trafficked at an increased rate due to the fact that folks who are coming south choose to bypass 270 and come down our road. It's already filled up. So when it came to my attention that nearly 500 acres of an existing study were being exempted, and as the gentleman said before me, with little to no transparency, you have to question what the motives there are. You know, this landscape has changed drastically, even in the 5 years that we have, or 6 years rather, that we've been here. You know, when I grew up in Gaithersburg, Urbana was a huge farm. I mean, it was just a big farm, and that's only, you know, 10, 15 years ago. I can't imagine what it looked like prior. You know, certainly don't want to encroach on, you know, Mr. Natelli's or any developers for that matter, you know, right to buy land, but you can't move the goalposts for developers because there's some conversations that are going on that we're not privy to. People live here. This is our community. I'm literally staring at Sugarloaf Mountain right now. So the decisions that this group and this committee and this commission makes truly impact people's lives. You know, there are literally hundreds of thousands of acres where development can occur. It's already been happening on the right side of 270, as others have mentioned. Aside from a personal, tangible benefit to developers, Mr. Natelli and others, I really can't see the benefits associated with this and with modifying the plan this way. I'm so disappointed as a younger person that we are continuing to fight these battles. And I know that others in this community have been fighting the same battles over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day with a different person or a different developer or a different parcel of land. It's time to stop, okay? Please stop moving the needle for developers and those who are privy to have inside conversations with public officials. This is not the way that our government and our community is supposed to be run.
So we still have callers on the line, but there's nobody in the queue to speak.
So if anyone on the line wishes to enter the queue to speak, please press *3. I want to thank everyone who's commented already tonight. This is really, it's important that we hear from you. We appreciate you taking the time to do this. And as we've mentioned, we are noting your comments. They will all be documented and shared with the Planning Commission when they begin their deliberations next month.
Hi, my name is Sue Trainer. I live at 8089 Fingerport Road. And first, let me say that I appreciate that all the work that's gone into this Sugarloaf plan. I know you all have deep expertise in these issues, and some of the decisions we have concerns about may in fact not be coming from your pay grade. Maybe they're coming from a little higher than yours, and you do just get to sit here and listen to us complain. But that being said, and with all due respect, I also was among those listening to the comments presented on Tuesday evening, and it seemed to me that citizens have a sense that the development horse is kind of already out of that west of 270 barn. I hear you saying that it's still an open process, but honestly, it doesn't really feel like it. It feels like that kind of decision is made, no matter what we say here. I certainly have that sense. Even right here as we're doing these calls, the structure of these meetings isn't citizen friendly. I attend lots of Maryland State Arts Council listening sessions about planning and policy that affect people's livelihoods, and they're all on Zoom. We can see the PowerPoint, which I couldn't tonight. We can see each other. We know how many people there are in the meeting. It's easy to comment live and respond in the comments field. It's not a problem. Why are you holding control over these things? I don't understand how that constitutes an open process. I also wonder why there's a big rush to move this plan forward to the planning board. As Tim has just told us, it's been in the works for 18 months. My partners on the Sugarloaf Stakeholders Advisory Group, the public process has been quiet for quite a while. And now we find out that during the quiet time, a developer's property was carved out of the protection boundary. And after all of that quiet time, we have to wonder why there's only a one-week opportunity for verbal public comments in the middle of August, starting on the night before the first day of school. The optics suggest that not many changes are anticipated before staff recommendations are scooted up to the more formal planning board process. But we think this is a document that deserves thorough and transparent vetting. So we ask you please to slow down. We're asking around. People don't know about this. People who will be affected by this don't know about it. Folks need more time. I'm hearing folks here and folks on Tuesday talking about that behind the closed door question. We are too. We were asking because my partner is on the advisory committee. We were asking questions about why the larger boundary is now 80 rather than 270, and we were dissuaded from pursuing that line of thinking. Something to the effect of, oh, it's really too far into the process for that to change. I gotta say, I worked in citizen advocacy when Columbia was new, and I've heard that line before. And my experience is it's designed to brush citizens out of the way. So I'm going to ask you to add us in support of all the comments that we've been hearing about holding the boundary at 270. There are many reasons, and others are making the points clearly, so I won't repeat them again. I did want to check back in on that question about what properties Mr. Natale owns. I understand that Tim is focusing our attention on that Thurston Road parcel that is addressed in the boundary and under conversation right now. But I would encourage you all to go look at county maps that show who property owners are and find out where Mr. Natale's property is. That is available, and it does run up the 80-270 corridor. We do appreciate the intent, we very much appreciate the intent of the Sugarloaf Mountain Management Plan, and we do ask you, please don't run over your Frederick County citizens to accommodate developers. They have a monetary vision for the area rather than the environmental vision espoused by this wonderful plan. So thank you so much for your time. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Trainer.
Hi, this is Nick Carrera on Thurston Road. I'm calling in live because you seem to have lost my comment that I left on option number 2 early in the program, so I'll repeat briefly. I note that nobody has answered the question asked by me and others, who imposed this change on the eastern boundary? It clearly was not the advisory group. It doesn't seem to have been the Planning Commission. It looks like it came from all the way at the top of the Frederick County administration, but nobody seems to want to admit that. Now, I note that the combination of two things that occurred in this changed plan the introduction of this Urbana Community Growth Area and the change, which is to allow 380 acres of Mr. Natelli's land to be considered for inclusion in this Urbana Community Growth Area. It looks to me like that is already signaling that you're going to allow a zoning change for Mr. Natelli. I mean, the combination of those is just too suspicious. Why leave them out, and why talk about a growth area if then you're not going to later on give him a pass on his request for rezoning that his 380 acres of agricultural land? That seems to me to be unethical. It seems like you're already signaling that he's got it. You're giving him a buy. I don't like to see that done by our county government. Again, my name is Nick Carrera. I live on Thurston Road, and I applaud all the comments that I have heard so far from my neighbors in the Thurston Road area, from others. I particularly liked the comment from Johanna about the area between Route 80 and 270. I think she made very good points about including that up to Park Mills, including that area in the Sugarloaf overlay. Thanks again, Nick Carrera, Thurston Road, Urbana District.
Just checking in again. There's nobody in the queue. Still have callers on the line, and just wanted to clarify that we did receive Mr. Carrera's voicemail, and the intent is to play the voicemails after people who are currently here and listening have had a chance to comment, in order to try to be more considerate of people's time and their chance to kind of make a comment live. So we were intending on playing your voicemail, Mr. Carrera, but I guess since you've commented live, we'll hold off on that. Thanks.
So again, for anyone on the line, if you'd like to comment live, you'll press *3. If there's anyone watching the live stream, you'll need to call in. That number is 1-855-925-2801. And when prompted to enter the meeting code, that's 9006. And again, it's *3 to comment live, *2 to leave a recorded message.
Hi, it's Matt Seward again, and I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Carrera just said regarding community growth area. Excuse me. I haven't seen any indication that these properties, Mr. Natelli's properties, have been now included in the Urbana community growth area or in the Southern Frederick County. I think that other plan, I can't quite remember the name of it yet, the Southern Frederick County Growth Plan. But I don't see any indication that those properties are in any kind of growth area at this point in time. Could you please clarify if that's the case?
That is correct, Matt. The lands owned by Mr. Natelli are not currently within the Urbana Community Growth Area. The Urbana
Or any other kind of?
The Urbana Community Growth Area boundary is Interstate 270.
Okay, so these properties aren't in any kind of growth area or any other planning area within the county.
That is correct.
Okay.
It should be noted,
All right,
though,
but
that
so
in the same way that the Sugarloaf area hasn't been formally incorporated into any special designation area yet because we're in the midst of the planning process, the Urbana and the 270 corridor, the best information you can get about that right now in terms of the strategic planning would appear on page 45 of the Livable Frederick Master Plan. And I would invite everybody who's interested to go to that discussion in the Livable Frederick document to glean some additional information, regarding what we've been talking about.
Okay, that's fair enough. Can you briefly summarize that, Dennis, right now? Does it point to any indications about what these properties may or may not be categorized as in the future?
Sure. It's listed under a item called the Interstate Corridor, which is part of our primary development sector in the Livable Frederick Master Plan. Now, the thematic plan diagram that illustrates this concept is exactly that. It's a diagram, so you can't really discern precise boundaries regarding any of these specific properties. The diagram itself shows Urbana as a kind of diagrammatic circle. It shows the Sugarloaf Mountain area as kind of a diagrammatic green area on the west side of I-270, and there's also some agricultural land shown as well. What it does point out are the three presumed interchange locations along 270 that could develop as part of a transit center or as a highway interchange if an I-270 project ever makes its way north of the Montgomery County line. So you do have a circle showing a repositioned Maryland 109 interchange that would actually feed from Maryland 75. That's been kind of a proposal floating out in the ether for several years. It shows a transit center and a highway interchange at the current Urbana location with Maryland 80. It shows an additional interchange or transit center at Park Mills Road as well. And for those of you with long memories, you may recall that at some points in the past 12 to 15 years, as the state has and the local governments have discussed transit options along 270. We've had variations of various iterations of that, which could terminate toll lanes, for instance, at Park Mills, which is, I think, why some of the state plans started to indicate the need for that interchange at Park Mills Road. But the basic theme, if you had to draw like a theme from this idea of the interstate corridor, it's essentially looking at mixed use development. It's looking at transit oriented development. It is clearly being described as development that would occur in concert with transit options. And it does talk about development along the corridor occurring at and around highway interchanges, not necessarily limited to the eastern side of the roadway, to best take advantage of existing infrastructure that we've already paid for and to take best advantage of those locations where we might have those future transit positions going into the future. So the idea of a planning process for the Urbana community might indeed include this idea of a 270 corridor as well, to kind of best join the ideas of using Urbana's existing private and public infrastructure for further development on its own footprint or in concert with other developments along the I-270 corridor in the future.
Thank you, Dennis. I had kind of forgotten all about that stuff in Livable Frederick, and now you reminded me of the nightmare that could be coming. You know, the wizard behind the curtain, and basically looks like he wants to develop 20 miles either side of 270 from Montgomery County all the way up to 70. But anyway, that's kind of scary. Well, there's lots of battles ahead then. Anyway, I know all of you, I like all of you, and I respect all of you. So thank you for the job that you're doing. And I know this, anytime you're talking about development and growth areas and preserving the environment, it's there's always going to be some conflict in it, but I think you're doing a good job, and I just want to make sure and hope that we can be as transparent as possible throughout this whole process going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I just wanted to piggyback on Dennis's comments and note that, I mean, obviously every call tonight has mentioned the Natelli properties, and we certainly understand why. They're very large properties, but those are not the only ones that were excluded from the planning area. We excluded a total of 32 properties, and that's north of the interchange, west of the interchange, and of course the Natelli properties there south of the interchange. And the idea was just what Dennis described, that we'd like to consider those as part of a separate planning effort. And so the idea that somehow we're changing zoning, we're not changing anything by excluding them from the Sugarloaf plan. We want to consider what that interchange should be as part of a separate planning effort.
The cutout that was made in the eastern boundary of the Sugarloaf overlay seemed to indicate that that was going to be where the community growth area was going to be. Now you came back and said, no, the Urbana growth area is all on the eastern side. Now, I draw your attention to page 43 in the draft Sugarloaf plan. On page 43, in the last paragraph of the section under Urbana Community Growth Area, let me read what it says partially here. Future public and private investments in our mobility may encourage, the county cannot afford to summarily dispense with limited growth opportunities on the western side of the highway right-of-way in the vicinity of the Maryland 80 interchange. That seems to say to me that in the future you view possibility for the Urbana community growth area to, you say the possibility it will extend onto the western side of I-270. Now my question is, where would that be? When I look at the map and when I look at the Natelli cutout, the only reasonable place where you could extend on the west side seems to be that large holding of Thomas Natelli, his 380 acres that are currently zoned agricultural. Do you intend to rezone all those residential areas, the people living along Fingerboard Road, and develop those? Were you going to kick out the Potomac Gardens and the cannabis thing and make that some part of your growth area? Now again, on the idea of this growth area, you say limited and you say compact. Now that sounds nice, but it looks to me, driving east from Urbana villages, that the only limitation on the growth of the Urbana growth area to the east, in the eastern direction, the only limitation is how fast the state can widen the Fingerboard Road along there to 4 lanes. I don't see any limitation happening on the growth of the area going east. And it looks to me like you already have programmed in the idea of growth area extending to the west, as you say, can't afford to summarily dispense with the idea of limited growth to the west of I-270. And as I said before, to me, looking at the map, the only real area available there looks like Natelli's 380 agricultural acres. I don't think he's going to plant them in soybeans this year or corn next year or what. He's just sitting there waiting for you guys to come and rezone them. Thanks again. Nick Carrera, Urbana District, living on Thurston Road.
Just a brief comment, Mr. Carrera. That all those good questions you ask, that's all not addressed in this Sugarloaf plan, whose focus is on conservation and environmental protection. all those questions you ask and points you raise, good points, that's intended to be addressed and analyzed during a future plan and a future planning process. Those are all, and many or more, all issues to be addressed, looking at the growth area, where the expansion may be, but, all different scenarios and land uses will be examined in some future plan process and planning initiative for these areas. So, what's written in the what's written in the Sugarloaf draft plan is, a kind of a concept of what possibly could be in the future. So, planning involves a lot of, study and analysis and thinking and taking a hard look at all these issues surrounding land use and growth and all the consequences. So, yeah, all those questions would have to be answered by another plan. They're not addressed besides introducing the broad concept in the Sugarloaf plan.
This plan. There's no doubt that there's been a lot of thought into it. Ma'am, the clarifying point that you made about, we're talking a lot about Mr. Natelli and his property is not the only property up for discussion. I'm going to be very frank with you. I was a little bit disappointed to hear that tack. I can't think of an intent or reasoning why the county would unilaterally, independently on its own, without undue influence, make the determination that 390 acres was even up for discussion for a potential exemption. Certainly it doesn't mean, it's going to be rezoned or anything's going to happen tomorrow, but this is the first step of a slippery slope. So, again, I don't pretend to be well versed on zoning and mapping and everything else that we have many subject matter experts on the phone who have already contributed. But, this is a confluence of factors that have led us to be alarmed by this. And one of those is what we perceive to be an extreme lack of transparency. So, I'm just gonna piggyback off what somebody said a couple of calls ago. The second I learned about this meeting, which was 3 days ago, and I live on Thurston, okay? I have never utilized this modality of publicinput.com, and I am extremely disappointed in we can't have a frank back and forth conversation with this modality. COVID, if it has taught us nothing, it has taught us how to utilize technology. Zoom accounts are free. Zoom accounts are, even if you get the premium version, are minimal cost to the county. So this doesn't feel like this is truly an opportunity for us to speak. It feels in many ways like the decision has been made and we are very far along in the process. And I can't tell you how disheartening that is. And to, have to push *3 to sit in a queue to not be able to have meaningful back and forth discourse where, we have shown as a society that we're able to do so for the last 18 months successfully. So, once again, we're not picking on Tom Natelli here. He just happens to have the largest parcel that is up for discussion. And frankly, maybe you can clarify for me. I'm not sure where that even came from. I'm not sure where that request was even initiated, why it might be in the best interest of the county and the community. That question has not been answered yet, and that is why we're focused on him. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, my comment was that we removed a total of 32 properties from the planning area. And those are the properties at the interchange for the reasons that Dennis described. We would like to look at the interchange as part of a separate planning effort. And that could be a new plan for the Urbana area. It could be a plan for the 270 corridor or some combination thereof. And one other comment I wanted to make. I know it's easy for people to feel like this process is really far along because there is a draft plan that's out there. So I understand feeling like, uh-oh, this is a done deal. And please, like, understand that this is not a done deal. This is the first draft. This is the staff draft. This is the very beginning of the process. So we know there are going to be changes to this plan. There are going to be plan changes at the Planning Commission level, and then there will likely be additional changes when it gets to the County Council. So there are going to be many opportunities for public comment, and there will be changes to the plan. This is the first draft that's put out there to start the conversation.
And I appreciate the explanation about the removal of the Natelli property and these other properties. I think the Natelli property in particular is such a touchstone because according to the plats of his property, it touches Thurston Road in at least 3 places. And that is of grave concern due to all of the things that have been talked about with the concerns for Thurston Road. And Thurston Road is called out so many times in the Livable Frederick Treasured Landscape Plan as a place to be protected. The road needs to have some traffic calming, all of those things, and then to allow a property to be removed that has access to that same road in multiple areas just doesn't make sense. And in the vein of rezoning, I did have a question. I believe there was a mention of some property on Roderick Road that is proposed to be rezoned to R1. And I'm wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit on that, on what it is currently zoned and how R1 would change or alter the allowable uses. I'll take my answer off. Thanks.
Yeah, there are just 2 small areas that are being proposed for the addition of R1 residential zoning. The current zoning in these 2 parts of these 2 subdivisions is agricultural, and these subdivisions, the Amelung Estates and the majority or the kind of the last segments of the Remsburg subdivision on Roderick, they've been subdivided, they're developed with residential dwellings, and we're proposing to change the zoning from their current agricultural zoning to R1 residential, simply to reflect the use of the property, the development of the property with residential dwellings. These are all, they're not large parcels. They're, 2 acres and below. So the additional R1 zoning we're recommending would not result in any additional subdivision of these lots. So simply to apply the zoning that best matches the current land use in these 2 residential subdivisions within the Sugarloaf area.
I live here in the Monocacy area. I'm actually on Monocacy Bottom Road, and that is within the Sugarloaf Plan area. I really commend and stand by my neighbors who are arguing against these sort of cutouts in the plan border along I-270. But I'd like to point out there's another area that appears as though it should be within the plan, but has either been just overlooked or omitted. And that would be Baker Valley. Everything in Baker Valley that goes between the National Park and the bridge there near Michael's Mill of Fingerboard. That whole area should be part of this plan too, because it borders the river, has several tributaries that feed the river from that area, and it's within the view site of the Sugarloaf area, and it's also very fragile in that it is right there along the river and contains a number of tributaries in that area. So I think we should consider to protect that area of Baker Valley as part of the plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been an active member of the Sugarloaf Plan Advisory Committee from the very beginning. As important, and I and my family have been active in protecting the Sugarloaf region from inappropriate development for almost 70 years. But based on our experience, there is really only one overriding issue in this draft plan. If the 500-acre Natelli master plan cutout is not reversed, if I-270, the bright shining line that has protected Sugarloaf Mountain for 70 years, is breached, the Sugarloaf treasured landscape is lost. Maybe not today or next year, but as sure as Sugarloaf Mountain stands today, the inexorable economic pressures of the Natelli plan modification will destroy the Sugarloaf treasured landscape area. Toward the end of the first virtual information session on Tuesday evening, August 17th, Mr. Natelli indicated that he had discussed his plans with the advisory committee. Let's clarify that discussion. From February 2020 to October 29, 2020, the advisory committee met 5 times. The only time the advisory committee heard from Mr. Natelli was at the very end of our Zoom meeting on October 29th, when he called in and said, and I paraphrase, "Hey folks, what about me? I bought a lot of land on the west side of I-270, and what are you going to do for me?" The discussion lasted about 1 minute. I think it is fair to say advisory committee members were quite surprised, if not shocked. Up to this point, no discussion by planning staff or anyone else had raised this issue about these agricultural and very low density residential lands now owned by Natelli, which have remained as a buffer to Sugarloaf in all the planning efforts going back at least 50 years. After this series of meetings, the advisory committee was of the understanding that the draft plan was about to be finished and would be presented shortly. Imagine our surprise when we received an email from the planning staff in February 2021 that the plan was now being delayed. Imagine our greater surprise when we finally received the draft plan on July 19th and 500 acres, presumably the land Mr. Natelli had been talking about, had been cut out of the plan around the Route 80 I-270 interchange for the Urbana Community Growth Area, raising the specter of the Urbana villages flowing across the bright shining line of I-270, destroying the planned protection and buffer of the Sugarloaf treasured landscape. Once intense development crosses I-270, nothing will stop it from flooding down Thurston Road, eventually to the Montgomery County line at Maryland 109. The incredible financial gain for a few people from this and other real estate development, and the added pressure from people fleeing the climate crisis, will make the destruction of the Sugarloaf treasured landscape inevitable. Finally, let's talk about the county growth areas as laid out on pages 40 to 47 of the earlier countywide livable Frederick master plan. Quite frankly, I find the maps quite difficult to read. The map on page 40 seems to suggest agricultural land and natural resource lands immediately adjacent to the west side of I-270 interchange, with a very small multimodal place on top of the interchange, may be allocated for park and ride lots and for frequent bus service. Now, look at page 46. There is something there called the Urbana County Growth Area. But notice the entire symbol is on the east side of I-270, not suggesting the spread of significant development to the west. Speaking of multimodal, that assumes major transportation improvements. Folks, we have been doing transportation planning studies on I-270 for 50 years. We may get there someday, maybe 50 years from now. The era of commuting the transportation corridors to the Washington core for employment is quickly coming to an end. As the climate crisis worsens, let's put our efforts and investments on local, concentrated, modern solutions like the East Alco area development, where the zoning and public service infrastructure are in place. Let's really protect the Sugarloaf treasure landscape and not allow Natelli to breach the bright, shining line. Let's protect Sugarloaf Mountain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poteet.
Yes, hello?
Hello there.
Okay. Everything's delayed. I'm going to second what they said about the technology. It's really terrible. I live on Thurston Road, Sandy Farrow. My property backs Natelli's property. And everything that you guys just said, which you're telling me or telling everybody that his property, he is not going to be developing it anytime soon, that, you know, it's exempt and everything. That's not true at all. He's already surveyed it. I have talked to the surveyors. They say he's going to develop it. I've talked to the people that knocked down the farms. They've knocked down all the farms. These farms have stood there. I've been here 20 years. These farms have stood there for the last 20 years. And all of a sudden, within the last month, he's knocked them down. 2 farms, completely knocked down. There are survey stakes everywhere, okay? And for somebody that isn't going to develop anything, or if you say that you haven't given him authorization or changed his zoning, that's ludicrous. You know, who would be investing all this money in surveying and knocking down buildings if some deal hasn't already been made? And that's just the point that I just want to make, because we have talked to people that are the surveyors and are the people that were knocking down, and they've all said he's getting ready to develop it. So I think that I don't know why it was exempt. It was some backdoor meeting, obviously. We all know it, and nobody wants to admit it. But, you know, especially with our today's government, where everything's done so shady, that we're upset. People along this road are upset with the shadiness that's going on. I just wanted to bring that up. So I don't know how many people know, since their property don't back his, to see what he's done. But I just wanted to let all that be known. Thank you.
Hi, it's Matt Seward again. And Kim, I just wanted to respond to one thing that you said 3 or 4 callers ago, that this is staff's draft plan. And I think that's what has everybody upset, is that this draft came about without the final input of the advisory group. When they left the table, so to speak, at their last meeting, the Natelli properties were still within the planning area. And then we had this long delay period, this blackout period, and then all of a sudden the Natelli properties were removed from the planning area. So it may be staff's plan, and it's well within the purview of the county executive or staff to put together the plan that they want and they think is proper, but it undercuts and bypasses the stakeholder advisory group. And I think that's the biggest problem that I have with the transparency issue in this, and that sounds like that's the biggest problem that other people have. And that transparency issue was just validated by the advisory group member that spoke. I couldn't catch his name because at the beginning of everybody's comments, it's cut off. So if they're stating their name, you don't know who it is. But and that supports anecdotally what I've heard about from about 3 other advisory group members, that they weren't involved in this and they were taken by surprise. So that's what really has everybody upset. And again, Mr. Natelli is now in a position where his properties are excluded from this planning area, and so he doesn't have to make that case to exclude them in front of the Planning Commission or the County Council. And if it looks like he has the votes lined up, then he doesn't have to make any case at all when this draft is being debated among the Planning Commission and the County Council. So it wasn't done in public to have, and it seems to go against the will of the advisory group when they left the table, that his properties were going to be included in the planning area, and then all of a sudden after 5 months it's taken out, and here we are. So that's what has everybody upset, and especially me. So anyway, that's the last time I'll call tonight, I promise. Thanks again. Bye.
You can call again, that's fine. And I did want to note that we had two meetings with the Stakeholders Advisory Group to go over the draft plan, and their comments, I mean, there were comments at both meetings about the boundary change. There were comments about a number of issues, the rural legacy area, traffic issues in the planning area. So all of the comments that we received from the members of the Stakeholders Advisory Group have been compiled into a document. So all the comments at those 2 meetings, and those will be provided to the Planning Commission, just like the comments that we're receiving at the open houses. So the Planning Commission has all of this information as they begin their workshops and their conversations about where they want this plan to go, what they want this plan to be. So we are not, I mean, I describe the plan as the staff's draft because that's what it is. We're not presenting this plan as, oh, this is the Stakeholder Advisory Group's plan. It's not. I mean, it's a plan that we developed with their feedback and with their input, but there were things that we had to make decisions about at the staff level. So where there are issues, where there are questions, where there are concerns from advisory group members, we're passing those along to the Planning Commission. And again, I've said this before tonight, but this document is really intended to give the Planning Commission a starting point for their discussion, for their deliberation, and they'll decide what's in the plan that moves forward to the County Council.
Hi, this is Jesse Johnson at 1539 Thurston Road. I called in the other night. I just was thinking of some more things that I have something that's kind of really been weighing on me, is that when Tom Natelli bought the land, he knew for sure, he definitely knew what it was zoned for. And he clearly bought the land with the intention of building, and he bought the land, it seems, with the knowledge that he could sway our Frederick County representatives into rezoning it for him and to getting his way. And right now I'm sort of at a loss as to why the representatives for the people of Frederick County and the businesses of Frederick County are going to bat for someone who is from Montgomery. Business is based in Montgomery County. And it's you know, it's just sort of nuts. It's pretty clear what his intentions were the whole time, from the moment that he bought it. From the, you know, we all know what he's up to, and I just don't understand why our representatives seem to be going through so much trouble to make his plans happen. You know, why? I guess is my biggest question.
So do we want to wait a bit to see if anyone else jumps in the queue, or should I go ahead and play some voicemails at this point?
I'll just read the number again. So for anyone watching the live stream, if you wish to make a comment, the number that you dial is 1-855-925-2801. And then when prompted, you'll enter meeting code 9006. And then you'll press *3 to be placed in a queue to comment live. And while we're waiting, John, if you want to go ahead and play some of the recorded comments, that'd be great.
Hi, this is Meredith Yeager, 1530 Thurston Road. I've lived here for 19 years, and I'd like to know what is meant by the Rensberger Estates, because I've never heard it called that. What the property, I believe, is being referred to. And so does that mean that there's not just one owner, but there's only one developer? Thank you.
Tim, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so that Remsburg Estates, that's the, I believe the family name of the owner of the property. And that went through a rezoning process in 2012. And that was the name on the subdivision plats when they were submitted to the county for review and approval. So all those lots were created and now they're all developed. So all of those lots have residential dwellings constructed on them, and that's just the name of the subdivision. Now, I don't know if that's the exact name of the sign that's out there in front of those new lots, but that's the name of the subdivision when those plats were submitted for review into the county.
We have a few more callers. I'll patch them through.
Give me a signal. I'm guessing you can hear me, so I will go ahead and begin.
Yes, we can hear you.
I am Stan Mordensky. I live at 11401 Meadowlark Drive in Greater Imesville, Maryland. I have been with you since 7:21 this evening, and I was with you the entire time on Tuesday. I wanted to hear what the residents had to say when they called in. I've never responded to a staff report before that I'm aware of, but I am familiar with speaking in Winchester Hall. Just a couple of weeks ago, my 8-year-old granddaughter and I hiked around the summit of the mountain. We enjoyed riding on the country roads. On Sugarloaf Mountain since 1972, I've enjoyed much hiking, soul-searching, nourishing my mind, body, and soul to escape the hustle and bustle of being overcrowded and white-knuckle driving on many of our 1950s 2 lanes windy country roads where there's way too many personal vehicles and there's an ever-growing number of large trucks. I thought several times today as I was planting cabbage, and I said, what could I say? If someone has brought this up, let me know. But have you all explained what the process is for public comment and explained a tentative timeline where residents would be able to make public comment to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and also public comment to the county council? And in these times of COVID, I think we should put the brakes on this process right now and wait until we can have a gathering of people at Winchester Hall and we can talk this out. Someone earlier said, you know, you can't see people. It really feels artificial. being in queue, waiting to speak was crazy. I had this conversation through my headphones about the climate crisis, which has nothing to do for the main part of what we're doing here. I waited for 20 minutes in queue, and I couldn't get in. I don't know why, but it's moving way too fast. And my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it goes to planning and zoning, and again, I would request after we are out of COVID and we can meet in numbers to have a meeting at Winchester Hall, have public comment, and take a rational approach instead of what seems to be very, very rushed. I don't know if you all explained to the people the I-270 intermodal study that was a driving force of much of this. It began in the 1960s, and I know Park Mills Road has been planned for a new interchange on 270, and it is going to make some drastic changes. I heard a developer 5 or 8 years ago say, with the new interchange at Park Mills and existing interchange at Route 80 and 5 miles of raw agriculture lands on both sides of the highway, that it is the developer's dream. Does that mean I'm up to 3 minutes, Mr. Supazinski? Was that it?
You're fine. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. You know, there's just so many things on the table. I hear rumors every month about the new Outer Beltway, a new Potomac River bridge crossing somewhere at Poolsville or somewhere. The whole planning picture to a taxpayer like myself is like a can of worms. It's going all kind of different directions. I do appreciate the Frederick County staffers that are with us again tonight. They have a tough job. They handle it very well. I respect each and every one of them. We've sat on the same side. We've sat on opposite sides of the table many times in the last 10 years. But we do need to have opportunities for taxpayers to make public comment in Winchester Hall. You know, there's more to communicating than just output. You need to see people's faces. You need to see what you're saying and how it impacts the listener. We're only getting a small piece of that across right now. Something that I like, and I guess because I'm a senior citizen, when I ask questions, I always look for the 5 W's. They don't always apply, but quite often, what, when, why, who, where, and sometimes how. I had not seen much about the Sugarloaf plan. I heard a little bit about the Sugarloaf Treasured Management Plan, but until I read some emails this past week, I couldn't have given you those 4 words all put together in one sentence. We do have an opportunity to keep a real gem in the Sugarloaf area. It has the history, it has the culture, it has the physical beauty, and I don't think man can build anything that is going to surpass what already exists. It does more for many of us taking a 1 minute, 5 minute, 3 hour vacation, looking at it, hiking the trails, stop and let the wind blow through your hair, more than many people that work in the mental health profession. So I do ask, let's have a timeline. Let's slow this down. Let's wait until public comment can be made face-to-face with the Planning and Zoning Commission, that public comment can be made to the county council, and again, this will need to be done after it's safe, designated by the CDC for us to have such gatherings. I thank you very much for listening to me. And if you want to call and ask me any questions, you're more than entitled to do that. Do you have any questions right now? All right, I thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mordensky. So I do want to take a moment to speak to Mr. Mordensky's process question. I know we've talked a little bit about that, but the timeline might not be obvious. So I think Tim mentioned that the Planning Commission is going to have a series of workshops, and that's likely to go on for a couple of months, perhaps a few months. And then once they have a plan that they're satisfied with, it's sent out for what's called 60-day review. So we send it to the state, and the state sends it to other state agencies. They send it to neighboring jurisdictions, so that there's an opportunity for our neighboring jurisdictions, the state agencies, to review the plan and comment on it. At that time, it wouldn't be unusual for the staff to be out having open houses and having sort of briefings to different community groups, neighborhood groups, just to make sure everyone is aware of what's in that iteration of the plan. And then once that 60-day review process is over, there's a public hearing. So the Planning Commission has all this feedback from the different state agencies, from our neighboring jurisdictions, from the public after that public hearing, and then they decide if there are any additional changes that they want to make to the plan to respond to the comments that have been received. And once they've made whatever those changes are, and that they're happy with that version of the plan, it's transmitted to the county council for their consideration. And the whole process, not the 60-day review necessarily, but the process of workshopping it and having a public hearing occurs again. So in all likelihood, this plan won't be before the county council until sometime early 2022. John, do we have any additional recorded comments?
I'm patching through a caller. It's processing.
Okay, thank you.
It seems to be hung up. I'm not really sure what the issue is. If we can just give it a couple minutes. Well, just in an effort to maybe knock this back into functional order, Maybe I'll try playing a voice message and see if that works.
Good evening. This is Linda Norris Walt from Middletown, Maryland. Congratulations that this plan for this lovely part of Frederick County is out in draft. I'm very pleased to see a lot of what's there. I am also concerned about hearing the answers to the questions asked about what I'll call the cutout of 490 acres and how it got there. It is discouraging that the stakeholder group was not brought along throughout the process when this was done. But on another note, in the hope that the citizens can, we citizens can convince the Planning Commission to restore that acreage, I would like to shift the focus by asking a question about the conservation overlay over the region. I was wondering if Tim or someone there could dig a little bit more into how these special development standards will work. Can you give some examples that would tell us how they might impact changes to or property changes? Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing your answer.
So the the recommended overlay zone does have quite a few elements and components. As I mentioned before, it has some proposals for design standards for new non-residential buildings in terms of lighting and design of signage and things like that, building facades to promote and advance high quality, attractive development for this very scenic and rural area. As I touched on in the presentation, there is a list of recommended uses to be not allowed or prohibited in the Sugarloaf planning area, uses that the advisory group and many residents in the community have identified as problematic for their area and their quality of life, looking at the impact of trip generation, road impacts, noise, septic pollution, all types of impact from land development. There's a proposal in the overlay zone for limiting having a size threshold on new non-residential buildings that and there's some exemptions in there for agricultural uses, but again, addressing the scale, the massing, the intensity of new uses in the Sugarloaf area. So the overlay zone, it also requires or recommends for some additional environmental reviews for site plans and rezonings and subdivisions. So it's all, it's spelled out in detail in the plan, but those are the main highlights and elements of the proposed overlay zone.
So here's my situation. I have two callers in the queue. One caller is hung up for some reason, or is like just processing for some reason. The other one is kind of lined up to speak. So what I'm going to try to do is put through the one that's lined up to speak, the one that's not kind of stuck here, and hopefully that'll correct whatever is going on.
My name's Stan Mordensky, 11401 Meadowlark Drive, Imesville, Maryland. I would hope that any forward movement on this Sugarloaf Treasured Management Plan would be halted until we can have face-to-face meetings, discussions, community sharing, because we're at such a tremendous disadvantage on communications with wearing masks. And tonight I'd like to see all these different people that are speaking, and I don't see them. It's not something that has to be rushed, not at all. I'd rather it move slowly, create fewer mistakes, have more input, and once the Sugarloaf area is changed, it's changed forever. And, you know, we can either take the time or screw it up royally, and no one calling in wants to see it screwed up. Thank you, Stan Mordensky. Bye now.
Hello again. It's Nick Carrera again. I think maybe I was the one who was messed up, and so I hung up and called again. But the technology sometimes is a little bit frustrating. I wanted to respond a little bit to the caller who's now, maybe 3 or 4 back, who expressed that this cutout in the eastern boundary of the current Sugarloaf overlay really doesn't seem to enhance the goal of the entire plan, which is the preservation of our treasured Sugarloaf landscape. It really is going in quite an opposite direction. Oftentimes in questions like that, they ask, okay, in the face of this, why? Well, sometimes, as we know, the answer ends up being money. I would encourage the caller. He can go to the Maryland Board of Elections website, and on that website you can search for contributions that have been made to people in politics. You can see where the politicians have gotten their money. I think he'll find that a developer has been very generous to the past commission when we had a lot of development going on, and the developer has also been very generous to certain current county officials. And this may be a clue, or may not. I'm prepared to believe that all of this is entirely legal. I'm also prepared to believe that it is influential in some county decisions. Again, the name is Nick Carrera in Urbana District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrera.
So again, with no one in the queue, I guess at this late hour, I'm going to just go ahead and play another voicemail that came in.
Kristen Morrison, 1820 Mount Ephraim Road, Adamstown, Maryland. My thanks go out to everyone facilitating and participating in this Thursday night meeting. I've lived on Mount Ephraim Road in the foothills of Sugarloaf Mountain since 2003, but I've enjoyed Sugarloaf Mountain for my entire life. We need to work together and preserve this land, our treasured land, for people, and we need to protect these lands and the animals who live within the boundaries we are discussing tonight. And I'm appalled that these 2 hearings are being held by telephone and by live stream instead of by open public hearing, or at least through Zoom in the dead of August when, like another caller noted, when schools just opened for the first time since the COVID pandemic began in 2020. If we can send our unvaccinated children to school, why can't we have live hearings on this incredibly vulnerable natural area, our beloved Sugarloaf Mountain? As I stated, I enjoyed this area with my friends, family, and colleagues for my entire life, and chose to move up here after 9/11 to seek the serenity of this sacred place. I have benefited and shared this area with so many like-minded people. I even taught rock climbing in the late 1970s up on the mountain. I don't want just the additional 500 acres that have been included in this supposed draft plan to be carved out and developed at the detriment of this national treasure. Let's all continue to protect and share the mountain. Please, let's hold the line at I-270. Many regards, Kristen Morrison, 1820 Mount Ephraim Road in Adamstown, Maryland.
So we still have no one in the queue, and that's the last voice message we received.
I'm just going to read the phone number one more time in case there's someone out there that would like to comment, someone who's watching. The number is 1-855-925-2801, meeting code 9006, and it's *3 to comment. We'll just give it a few minutes. I'm going to just mention our email address again. We do appreciate receiving written comments. The comments that we receive are reviewed by staff, and they will be passed on to the Planning Commission and the Council. The email address is sugarloafareaplan@frederickcountymd.gov.
It looks like nobody's entering the queue.
All right. Well, then that concludes our open house. I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight. We want and very much appreciate your comments and your participation in this process. Have a good night, everyone.